I have been the head of Asia Pacific for a global MNC before, as well as being part of Worldwide Council for Digital Strategy Measurements, which is related to analytics. I've been a director before for an agency, and I've also been the head of data, heading up a whole department. So that's my career history. In terms of the industries that I've participated in before or I have been involved in the past, is quite varied. There's been technology, telco, banking, aerospace, e-commerce, and such. Well, you may be wondering, is it because I kept hopping from one company to another? Actually, it's because when I was involved in consultancy, my clients were in a lot of different industries, and that's how I ended up being involved in this kind of industries. My academic background is in robotics, and that's my bachelor degree. And subsequently, I went on to take 2 masters, one in marketing, the other in artificial intelligence. And on top of that, I'm also a Mensa member. So that's about me. Well, the topics that we're going to cover today will be this few. When we talk about being a data analyst, I thought it would be beneficial for us to first understand what exactly is a data analyst. I think the term is becoming common. We hear quite a lot of people say that my job involves some kind of analysis, and perhaps even part of a job title is something analyst nowadays becoming a common thing. So let's have a bit of clarity. What do we really mean when we say go into a job that is as a data analyst? And also, what does it really take for somebody to become a data analyst? It could be a consideration for yourself, or it could be a consideration when you want to hire somebody into your team. So when we say what does it take, it will cover both the requirements as well as the kind of characteristics of a person that would make a good data analyst. And of course, after learning about what it takes to be a data analyst, one logical question would be, if I am interested, then how do I get started to become a data analyst? So that would be something that I will cover as well as part of the webinar tonight. And of course, when you decide to be a data analyst, what sort of career path can you look forward to in the longer term? If you start as a data analyst, what do you progress to? And what kind of salary range can you look forward to getting as a data analyst? Of course, that's going to be a very interesting portion that everybody's wondering about, right? And apart from being a data analyst, what are the other related jobs? So for example, after learning about what it is like to become a data analyst, you realize that, hey, maybe that's not my cup of tea, but I am still interested in data. And what other jobs would there be that still involves data, but not a data analyst? So those would be the few things that we're going to be talking about. And at this juncture, let me just pause for a while, and I would like to repeat the question that Enyao asked earlier. Are there any thoughts or any questions in your mind that you're hoping to get some answers for as we go through the topics tonight? Because if you have them, feel free to ask your questions now or type your questions in the chat so that along the way, when we arrive at a particular topic, I can pick up your question and talk about it as well. I'm just doing a check on the chat within Zoom here. Well, looks like no questions yet, but well, feel free to ask your questions along the way. You can ask your questions verbally, unmute yourself and ask your questions, or you can also just type your questions in the chat and I will look out for your questions along the way. Okay, so let's get started. The very first question. What is a data analyst? Or in other words, when you say somebody is a data analyst, what exactly do they do? Data analyst, is it somebody who stared at the computer screen whole day long, looking at numbers and doing some maths? Well, in short, the role of a data analyst is really to interpret data and turn it into useful information or meaningful information for a certain purpose. So whenever we do data analysis, one of the main questions that we need to ask is, when I carry out a certain analysis, what question am I answering, or what am I trying to get at? If I have finished doing all my calculations, doing all my maths, or doing whatever analysis needed, the answer that I get at the end, how does it help the company? How does it help the business? How does it help in a certain decision making? So a data analyst is somebody who tries to answer these kind of questions using facts and data. So that is what a data analyst do in a nutshell. And of course, it involves gathering information from multiple sources. It could be information from within the company, or it could be information that is outside of your company. For example, industry reports is also a common source of information. You could be, well, some information are free from the internet, some information are not free, and you have to purchase from a certain information provider. For example, finance data, you can take from Bloomberg, but in some cases, you will need to subscribe in order to get those as your data sources. And you will take all this information in and figure out how all this information related to each other, and then form up your analysis and derive what are the patterns and trends, and use that to answer the questions that you have when you first started the analysis. So that is what we mean by doing the job as a data analyst. And after you have done all of that, there is one last part, which is find a way to communicate all these results back to the person who was asking the question and asking for your help to find out the answer for these questions. So it can be that you could have conducted a very comprehensive study, you could have done some research, and you are being asked to present your results to a certain audience, or it could be just report it back to your manager, or report it back to your department, or to your company, or to publish your findings in a certain place. It could be publish it on a website, publish it within a certain newsletter publication and such. So essentially, these are the main functions of what is expected of a data analyst. Let me just pause here for a while to see if anybody have questions. Not yet? Okay. Let me just carry on in that case. So when somebody want to advertise, when you want to hire a data analyst, this is what a typical job description could look like. Or if you are looking out for a job as a data analyst, sometimes the job title itself could be something else. It may not be exactly written as data analyst. It could be written as a data specialist, for example, or it could be written as a business analyst as opposed to a data analyst. So we'll talk about what are some of these variations later on as we go into the variations of a career as a data analyst. But typically, this is what you would see as the job description. It will say that as a data analyst, you're expected to collect and interpret data. You're expected to analyze the results and then report the results back to relevant members of the business. Identify patterns and trends in the data sets, and work alongside teams within the business or the management team to establish certain business needs. So this again comes back to answering certain business questions that were given or assigned to the data analyst. And of course, as part of setting up a certain process of doing the work of a data analyst, you may end up having to define a certain data collection process or a certain analysis process. Sometimes it's because those kind of analyses need to be repeated on a regular basis. For example, produce a monthly report or produce a weekly report. So you may want to set up a certain process that makes it easy for those reports to be produced and delivered to the audience. And hence, that leads to the last point here, where a data analyst also makes recommendations about what are the methods and ways in which a company can obtain or get data, as well as analyze the data to improve the quality and efficiency of data systems. Any difference between data analytics and data analysts? Belinda, thanks for your question. Yeah, that's a valid point, because sometimes the word analytics is also being used. Analyst is also being used. Analysis is also being used. So in short, or have you heard of any other similar words related to that? Analytics, analysis, analyst. Well, the difference is when we say analyst, usually we refer to a person. When we say analysis, we are referring to the work done, as in carry out an analysis. And when we use the word analytics, it has to do with the science and the study of data analysis. That is what we call analytics. So it sometimes leads to people talk about what method you apply in your analysis, and hence that is would be considered as topics under analytics, which is the study of data. So those are the difference in the words. And unfortunately, sometimes even within the industry, people tend to use some of these words interchangeably. For example, they could mean where they could put up a job ad that say looking for data analytics, and what they really mean is data analytics specialist, and that word specialist sometimes is just left out, and people generally would understand, you know, this kind of words nowadays. So Belinda, does that clarify your doubt about these terms? Okay. Oh, what about data scientists? Yes, I will cover the role and the difference of data scientists versus data analysts later on when I talk about career. This video is already being recorded. You will receive a recording of the video since you are subscribed and you are an audience within this seminar. So don't have to record it on your own directly. You will get access to the recording. And well, then the other thing is, you know, people tend to stereotype and say, oh, you are doing data analysis as a job. That means you sit in front of the computer like the lady in the picture here, whole day long, looking at numbers, doing maths. Is that true? So based on the description so far, are you able to tell me now, is that the true picture of the job of a data analyst? You think so? Look at these bullet points one more time. Do you think that, imagine if you are the person doing the job of a data analyst, would you imagine yourself as somebody who is sitting in front of the computer whole day long and just typing away, trying to do calculations, looking at data? What do you think? Okay. So Fig is saying that participated in a short course on data analysis before starting out. So you have learned the concepts of probability, statistics, which are maths-based, important skills. Yeah, we will talk about the important skills. Yes, what you have highlighted, maths, especially in the field of statistics, probability, are important. However, coming back to my question earlier about if you imagine yourself as a data analyst, is it true that you're just sitting in front of the computer the whole day long? Well, of course, if you're talking about working from home, then whether you're having meetings or doing work, it is still in front of the computer, right? But actually, the role of a data analyst, while on one hand, yes, there is some level of maths being involved, and you would need to work with numbers, you need to work with data and facts. The other part, which sometimes appears a little hidden within this job description, is that you will notice that work alongside teams within the business, and you have to collect data. And sometimes when you say collect data is not from a source, you may end up having to talk to people to get information, which sometimes involves a little like interviewing people to gather some information, because information is not always just numbers. Sometimes they are qualitative information as well. So those of you who are asking questions, I'd like to encourage you to pose a question to everyone instead of directly to me, so that everyone can see your question as well and benefit from the questions that you have in mind. Yeah. And there is this also the portion about having to present your results. What are your analysis? What outcome did you get out of churning all the numbers? And you will need to be able to relate that back to the audience and describe what are your findings, talk about what are some of your thoughts that you derive out of the analysis. So that's actually a lot of communications going on as well, both in the initial stages of needing to collect data, gather data, and sometimes even in the process of interpreting the data, you may end up having to talk to people, especially somebody may say, okay, this is a set of data that I've given to you. It could be just all numbers, but if you need a further understanding of what is the meaning of some of the numbers, because you're not familiar with them, you may end up having to go back to these people and talk to them, have a conversation, understand the meaning behind all the numbers given to you. So actually, communication is a large part of the work of a data analyst as well. It's not just working on all the maths. Communication, both in gathering information, gathering the understanding, the information that you receive, as well as presenting your findings to people. So communication is actually quite a large part of the work of a data analyst as well. And okay, so where do data analysts work? These are some of the typical employers. Banks, because banks has a lot of data, a lot of numbers, a lot of dollar signs. Yeah, we like to look at a lot of zeros at the back, hopefully in our own bank account. But well, of course, when you work in large companies, it's quite common to have data analysts as a job. Banks are considered large companies usually, and also especially software development companies, because they will need to carry out analyses and make decisions such as what kind of product feature I need to put in my next version, in my upgrades, and what are the usage of different elements within a certain product. So those kind of decisions need to be derived from a certain amount of data in order for it to be meaningful and useful. So product companies, software development companies, and even consultancies. Consultancies are the ones where you become an advisor, you become a consultant to anybody who needs an advice about analyzing their data in order to answer some kind of questions. And of course, telco also has a lot of data, and they always need to think about how to optimize pricing versus what they offer to their customers. We also have public sector organizations. Public sector, because when they look at forming up certain policies for the nation within a certain sector, within a certain segment, they will need to first carry out a certain research, a certain analysis based on, again, facts and numbers in order to think about whether a certain policy would benefit the groups that they are targeting. Of course, social media and marketing agencies, one which you have probably heard a lot about by now. You collect a lot of data from marketing, especially from digital marketing as well. And having this kind of data, of course, the next step is to do some analysis and make it useful for yourself. Colleges and universities, yes, both as in a teaching position, as well as taking the data that is available within the university itself to do further analysis, because universities also need to make decisions on what kind of courses to be offered and what kind of expansion plans to think about, what kind of collaborations. So those decisions also need to be based on facts and figures. Pharmaceutical, life sciences, biomedical, these are the up and coming, especially in Singapore as well. They need to analyze a lot of data in order to make decisions. Well, manufacturers, operational data, even leisure and hospitality organizations, they want to think about what kind of packages can I put together and offer to holiday makers, to people who would be attracted to a certain nature or a certain kind of a holiday. And of course, retailers, what kind of service and products you want to sell. And because competition is getting stiffer, a lot more entries in the market, a lot of new entrants in the market that you need to compete with, then how do you make decisions about what to improve on? It could be improvement about your product. It could be improvement about how you structure yourself as a company. It could be improvement about how you do your distribution, your logistics, or even about how you do your storage, your warehousing, and such. So it looks like, well, it's very broad. There's almost all the companies that you can, all the kind of industries that you can think of. There is somehow a need for data analysts. Well, now that we have looked at what it is that we define or classify as a data analyst, what they do, what is the job, and where they work, then the next question is, what does it take? You know, if you are interested to be a data analyst, or you know of somebody who wants to be a data analyst, what advice would you give? You know, what does it take to be a data analyst? What's your guess? What do you think is needed? Anybody? I think there was already somebody who mentioned earlier about the useful skill set would be some background in maths, especially statistics, probability. What else do you think is could be a useful prerequisite? Well, to start off, if you have a degree in the following subjects, which is maths, computer science, statistics, economics, that would be useful. And Raymond mentioned detailed person. Yes. Joe mentioned analytical. Yes, spot on. You are right as well. So in terms of academic backing or academic background, the fact that you have made a decision to study these kind of subjects, it would definitely mean that you have some level of interest in, you either have some level of interest or you have an aptitude, you are naturally inclined in this kind of topics. So, well, that's a good sign, because these are the kind of degree that involves quite a fair bit of analysis. And also, here, some of you have already highlighted what are some of the qualities of a data analyst. So while academic background is one thing, but personality, characteristics, and the quality of a data analyst, you all guessed it right. Somebody who is analytical, somebody who is detailed, and of course, what helps is you have experience in some data models or reporting packages, which will be some of the tools that are typically used in the industry nowadays. The ability to look at large data sets, and when you see a lot of numbers, you don't squirm and say, oh no, I don't want these. You know, if you feel that, then probably to be thrown into the job as a data analyst may not be for you. But if you look at a set of numbers, a set of data, and then you have a tendency to want to stare at it for a while and then start forming up some ideas about what relationship, what associations there are within this kind of data set. Well, that could be a sign. And of course, the ability to communicate in the form of writing up what are your findings, writing up or explain your analyses in writing as well. So verbal and written communication is a good skill to have, and being analytical in your mind, and you're inclined to think about solutions to problems, because as an analyst, a lot of times what you're really doing is trying to answer somebody's question by using data, using facts, using numbers. You're using all of these to meet the objective of looking for an answer to something. And that is, in a way, problem solving. And some of you mentioned earlier, attention to detail is an important quality. And somebody who is able to spot errors and able to catch details, those are what we consider as aptitude. That means if you start looking at details, you feel that, oh, you become very tired very easily. Then if you want to do this as a job, a full-time job, then it may end up being very tiring for you to keep doing that, because it may not come naturally for you. But of course, this is a skill that can be developed. A lot of these are, sometimes even if you say they are not natural inclination, but it can be developed because of an interest within the industry, within the role. Things like, how do you write reports? Well, not all of us are born with that natural talent of knowing how to write well. We learn along the way. We look at examples, we have mentors to guide us, we have coaches who took us through examples as well. And even you talk about analytical, well, yes, some people have that natural tendency, but even being analytical actually can be trained. You know, you can start looking at things in a certain way. How do you form patterns? Actually, these kind of things can be trained. So even if you don't consider yourself as somebody with these qualities, but if you are interested to pursue this as a career, well, don't be disheartened, because this kind of skills can be trained. And over time, you develop and to become better as well. Well, apart from this, well, the question then is, how do you get started? Of course, get some grounding, get some foundation with the basic level education that is required to get on the job. Build up your technical skills in a certain area that you would want to specialize in. Usually that would be a good start. and work on projects with real data. So even if your actual job today doesn't require you to do any of this data analysis or put your skills to your actual job, you can actually pick it up on your own and start building up a portfolio so that when you want to apply for a job, you can tell people that you have real experience of doing some of this data analysis before. You have applied a certain method of data analysis. Even you can talk about analyze public information. For example, financial data that is available publicly of market movements, or even if you're interested in looking at country population data or certain government policies that talks about salary range, age, and such. Yeah, you can even just pick up something that interests you, or even looking at analyzing what is a good school for your kid to apply for. You know, some of us parents end up collecting a lot of data, doing our analysis. Well, if you have done that before, that actually is an example of real work done with data analysis. And you can think about how to develop that as your portfolio that you can showcase to your future employer, future potential employer, and practice presenting your finding. There are interviews where people really ask you, can you please do a short presentation so that we can see how you present your findings. There are such interviews as well. And use that to get into an entry-level data analyst job, and then consider how you want to advance yourself. So there is a question from Joe. What is the typical team that the data analyst works in? That's a very good question. It depends on the structure or the setup of the company. Sometimes there is a whole department of data analytics or a data department in some company structures. Otherwise, the data analyst could also be part of the business team, because when I say business team, it could mean different functions within the business. For example, you could be a data analyst in a marketing department because they would want to collect a lot of marketing data from the campaigns that they run and look at what is effective, what is not effective, how should they structure the next campaign and plan forward. So that is a data analyst within a marketing department. And sometimes you may end up being a person who is between a business and the technical teams, where your role actually is a bridge between the people who have their business requirements, who talk about what they aim for, what are their ambitions, what they want to achieve, versus the technical people who talk about, oh, these are the kind of information we have, this is all the data that we have, this is what the database looks like, and you become the bridge between these two teams, and you explain to the technical team how or what kind of data you're looking for, and you translate your findings to the business team using the business terms that they will understand. Okay. For example, business teams tend to talk about what is the ROI, or what is the value, you know, what is the risk of doing something new. So those are kind of business language that the business teams would use to describe what they are looking for, and may not sometimes be directly understood by the technical teams, right? So that also could be positions where the data analyst steps in to do the work. So Joe, does that answer your question? Okay. Yeah. Now, here is, if you have decided to be a data analyst, what kind of career paths can you be looking at? So you can specialize in a certain domain, which is like a business analyst, operations analyst, marketing analyst, healthcare analyst. These are very specialized within a domain where you apply the skill set of a data analyst to a very niche area because of your familiarity with the particular industry, you know some of the nuances, you know some of the things, how the particular industry operates, and hence you would marry your experience with the skills, the mathematical skills, analysis skills of a data analyst, and put that together to be a specialist. So these can be a non-technical role in most cases. And if you decide to go technical, of course, you can go into a data scientist role. A data scientist is somebody who would write computer programs that will churn out the analysis in some very specialized ways, which we call build data models. And the type of analysis can be quite complex as well. Examples, we may end up talking about, let's analyze all the comments that are being received from customer feedback. And you would need a data scientist to develop a certain model so that the text, which are all the words and sentences, can be translated by the computer into something meaningful. And you may end up wanting to do sentiment analysis, for example, to see whether people are speaking well or speaking ill of your company, and what kind of reputation are you having in the market. So that kind of development of a model, which we would term as NLP, natural language processing model, requires the skill set from a data scientist, which is a technical role, because it involves writing codes and writing computer programs. And you can also move into management from starting out from a data analyst, because of your ability to see a big picture, ability to link up different components and elements in the course of doing analysis. You can end up being analytics manager that will guide the staff on who can be responsible for collecting data, who can analyze, who can present and put everything together as a project, as a collective report and such. And of course, that can allow you to move further up and to a director of analytics or even the chief data officer. And by the time you reach the level of a chief data officer, it would require more than just knowledge about analysis. It would require knowledge about how data are being stored, how data are being operated, and how does it link to the rest of the organizations as well. You can also branch into consultancy, as mentioned earlier, where you become advisor or a consultant to your clients who will be looking for some kind of analysis to be done. And of course, you can go into training, either a corporate trainer. You can be a corporate trainer from, well, even from a consultancy, you can also go into corporate training, either from a training agency, training provider, or you can go in to be a lecturer, to be a tutor, a teacher. So those are also available routes that you can take from being a data analyst. The question here is, so a data analyst can be freelance too? Yes, you can, because consultants can be freelance, right? So data analysts, you can be freelance as well. And what does it take to be a freelance data analyst would be that your ability to sell yourself, your service, such that you have a demand for your services. And you either specialize in a niche such that you build up a very strong portfolio. For example, financial analysis. You could be very experienced in finance and you have a lot of knowledge about financial market, and hence you could be sought after because of your skills from finance, your knowledge in finance married with your skills in doing analysis. So yes, you can be a freelance. Of course, being freelance means that you also have to manage your own client, balance between having to look for clients as well as getting the job done to deliver to your clients. That is always the need to balance this two. Okay. So the interesting part here now is salary range. How much do data analysts earn? What's your guess? Anybody? 1,000, 2,000? Well, just a caveat, right? It varies according to scope of work. Scope of work means sometimes the work here means that you are part of a very big team and hence your portion is quite small, or you can be in a startup where you do almost everything related to data analysis, including trying to look for data, trying to put together your presentation, trying to do all this. Yeah, there is a certain scope involved. Scope can also mean how big is your data set that you're looking at. Are you looking at just Singapore local company data, or are you thinking about having to analyze data from all the countries in the whole world? You know, that kind of scope is also something that plays a part in what is the range of salary. And of course, there is seniority, because seniority comes with experience. Being an experienced data analyst means that you are quick to spot certain things that other people who are more junior may miss out. Either you know that, oh, if data comes from this kind of source, you must always do certain data cleaning, you must always filter your data in a certain way, and hence you can get things done faster because you're more experienced. Also, seniority sometimes comes with, because you're more mature, you have a certain strong thinking that adds a lot of value within the analysis. For example, if you're very experienced in the market, you are a very experienced digital marketer, for example, you will already know, okay, what is the typical click-through rate? You know, if you get 5%, is it good, is it bad? You know, sometimes it requires a certain level of experience to be able to put that value within the analysis and say, what level is considered good or bad, or up to which point should you be alarmed, or up to what level, you know, does it trigger a certain response from people? So that comes with a certain level of experience. Actually, the question is quite muffled. I can't hear that question very well. Can I trouble you to type it in the chat? Sorry about that. Okay. Meanwhile, let me continue. Industry plays a part. Certain industries tend to pay higher salaries than other industries. And geography means is the work, are you working in Singapore or working in a different country? So, well, that still begs the question, right? Exactly what is the salary range? Now, let me give you some numbers that have been pulled out from public websites, Glassdoor and Indeed. This is what they reported based on their analysis of a certain number of data that they had. This is the range, 4,000 something, 5,000 something for somewhat 2 to 4 years of experience, but the full range could be between 3K to 7K with bachelor degree kind of education level. Well, this is just somewhat a very average figure, but the truth is the salary range of a data analyst is very, very broad, because data analyst is prevalent in a lot of different industries, in a lot of different seniority level, in a lot of different scope as well that is being defined by the company. So the real salary range actually is very, very broad. Okay, so well, if you want to have an idea of the figure, that this is what has been reported by Glassdoor and Indeed. Well, let's look at what are some of the data-related careers. If you start off as a data analyst, there is a range of non-technical. So this chart here shows ranging from non-technical to technical, from generalized to specialized. So there is a data analyst that goes on to specialize in domain-specific analysis, like operations analyst, healthcare analyst. Those are domain-specific. And there is also business intelligence analyst, which typically looks at company-level data that is reported at the management level. So when the management looks at trying to make decisions about company growth, they would need to rely on some form of business intelligence analysis being performed. So that is what business intelligence analysts would do. There is also risk analysts looking at risk factors, financial analysts, financial data, and there is also marketing analytics specialists, especially nowadays when there's a lot of digital marketing happening and being used. Marketing analytics is actually a specialized field as well, because there are certain terms, certain formulas that is being used in analyzing marketing to determine how good or how bad is your marketing results. Well, it is a specialized field. And here you could see that there is something called a data governance analyst. These are the kind of people who would look at what kind of policies, what kind of standards do we want to implement within the company, so that is more feasible, it facilitates the data analysis being done within the company. Examples, these are the kind of people who would say, okay, when you put dates into the systems within the company, always have day, month, year as the format. Or when you store customer information, the name need to be split into first name, last name. Don't just put the name as one chunk. So these are the kind of things that end up being specified as data standards. How do you standardize data across a company so that it's easy for data analysis? What kind of policies do you put in place? For example, now there is PDPA. You must make sure that you follow certain rules, certain law to make sure that your data is protected. So Selena is asking, can you be more than one role of this at the same time? The answer is yes. And I have done that before as well. Sometimes the role evolves. It could also be because of your own inclination. You find that, hey, I start to get involved in defining policies for the company, and yeah, you develop an interest in that. Yes, you can. You can be more than one. And in terms of the technical roles, this is some of the things that you could be looking at. Data visualization engineer actually is a full-time job, because it takes quite a bit of skill to develop very nice looking charts, because you have to think about what kind of font is representative of certain elements, your choice of colors, your choice of charts, your arrangement, your layout, and what chart comes first, what chart comes next, and how do you link up your data. So there is actually an art and a science behind all this visualization, and it is a full-time job to do a data visualization engineer. And it is technical because you need to know the tools well that you use. You need to know a certain kind of rules in visualization, almost like a user experience. And there is also a data architect role. Data architect means when there's a lot of data that you need to keep within the storage, how do you organize your data so that it is a logical grouping? Do you put customer data with the name and address? Do you put them together or do you separate? Do you put transaction data together with your product information, or how do you link them? How do you separate them? How do you organize your data? So that is a data architect who will design all these structures. Yeah. And there is also data scientist, which we talk about, which is quite a technical role. There is a data engineer as a job as well. Data engineer are the people who need to develop the codes that cause data to flow from one place to another. So within the storage of a data, we actually have a lot of compartments within the storage and say that, oh, data that comes in from digital marketing campaigns come to this table as a start, and then we need to put in certain formulas to do certain calculation and make the data flow into the next level and perhaps flow out to populate a certain report. So the data engineers are the ones who build what we call data pipelines. It's almost like how the water flow from one place to another. You need some engineer to build the pipes. So the data engineer built this kind of data pipelines, and it involves certain technical skills and knowledge of the tools as well. And something that's very specialized, very technical, is known as machine learning engineer. It's really using AI, data science, machine learning. It requires having a specialized knowledge about certain models, certain data models. I earlier talked about natural language processing. That is one example of a specialized machine learning. There is also voice processing, there is image processing, there is a video processing. How do you catch a robber from a video footage? How do you identify somebody is doing something malicious? You know, so those are very specialized areas. Okay, let me just pause here for a while to see if anybody have questions up to this point. Okay, if not, then yes, there is a question. Is Python a key skill for all these technical roles? That's the question from Joe. Technical roles, yes, especially data scientists, machine learning engineer, yes, you will need to have Python as a skill. Well, certain level of analysis, you can use RStudio. Data engineer, you need to be strong in SQL, because you will be taking data from one place, putting data in another. So a lot of times the base or the foundation of using certain tools involves knowing how to write SQL. Data architect, it is good to know about a lot of structures, a lot of tools, but you don't always implement directly as part of the job, but it is a knowledge that helps you in designing your data architecture. Data visualization engineer requires knowledge about certain tool. Examples, Tableau is a visualization tool. Click and Google Data Studio, yeah, that's also allow you to do visualization. So those are the tools that are being used by these different groups. Whereas on the non-technical side, it involves a lot more about your thinking process and how you carry out certain reasoning in order to produce an analysis, more so than having to know about certain specific technical skills. So those are the non-technical ones in green. Okay. Sorry that we overrun a little bit, but let's open up for question and answer. Any other questions that you all want to ask? Any questions? No, I think some questions were already asked and answered earlier as well along the way. Thanks to those of you who put forth your questions. Well, if there are no questions, then here is just some endnotes to help you think about yourself or somebody that you know. How long can you be job ready without prior experience? Question from Atul. So let's go through this, and then because that also forms part of the answer. Do I have an aptitude to be a data analyst? Am I usually curious? Am I always asking questions? Why this? Why like that? Why can't it be different? You know, or how come, you know, the numbers are like that? Where do the numbers come from? Who figured out all those things? Do you usually find yourself asking these kind of questions? Do you have a tendency to peruse or scrutinize details? For example, when you receive your phone bill or your credit card bill, do you tend to just throw it one side, don't want to look at it, or do you actually look at it line by line and see, is this correct? Is this wrong? You know, do you tend to have this tendency to always want to, you know, zoom into the details of things? And are you comfortable with numbers and trends? That means when you are given a whole page of numbers, do you squirm and say, no, I don't want to look at this? Or do you find that, you want to start staring at it more and you want to start looking at this? So that's what we mean by aptitude, that you're not afraid to look at numbers. or you're not afraid to zoom into details. And is there a domain knowledge that you can leverage on? Because we talk about being a generalist, general data analyst, versus having a certain specialization within the industry. So if you're not a fresh grad, most probably you would have been within a certain industry all along, and you can actually leverage on these to jumpstart your career into becoming a data analyst, because that experience, I must tell you, is actually valuable. Because somebody who is fresh out of school, all they know is all the maths of doing analysis. They don't have the knowledge that you have about the industry, about your specialization. So actually, you are not losing out to the fresh grads at all. And even if you are a fresh grad, you would have studied a certain domain, a certain field that you could use as a leverage for becoming a data analyst. And of course, what is your tendency, non-technical versus technical? You can go both ways. You can start off being technical and slowly branch into non-technical, or you can be non-technical and branch into technical. I have seen people who do both. So it is, an open field for anybody to go in any direction. And what skills do I need to pick up? I put communication and presentation skills as the top here because often it is being missed out as being essential. A lot of people think about maths. A lot of people think about having to deal with numbers and facts. Yes, that is important, but equally important is your comfort level in communication, and even to the extent of delivering presentations and managing stakeholders, because you need to get information from them, you need to tell them information, and of course, technical skills in maths, analysis, in the tools, that is also important. Well, when you look through this set of questions and ask yourself how much of these you already have, then if you have a lot of this already, it is much shorter for you to jumpstart your career to become a data analyst. You just need to look at, what am I lacking? Do I need to pick up some technical skills? Then perhaps just go for a course, pick it up, and give it a try. You can even start by doing something on your own, build up your own portfolio, as what we talked about earlier as well. So that's the answer to your question. It's a range of how soon you can become a data analyst based on how much of these you would like to pick up and build up as your arsenal of skill set. Okay, and of course, we talked about this. How do you get started? We start by getting a foundational education. And of course, this is where we like to introduce to you some of the courses that are available for you to kickstart your career to become a data analyst as well. There are certain areas which covers a certain domain, like e-commerce, advertising, and of course, Google Analytics is into analyzing web data, web traffic, and of course, social media, content strategy. These are domains that you can pick up and start branching into data analytics to be a data analyst. And within our series of career talks, coming up next is the technical side of the data job as a data scientist. What is it like to be a data scientist exactly? What do you do? What kind of skills needed? That will be covered as the next session, which will be held on 20th April. And you can scan this QR code. Right now, this QR code is still pointing to today's session. There will be, it will require a bit of time for it to be refreshed, to be updated with the next session. You can try that from tomorrow onwards. And just keep track of this upcoming _webinar and check out. Any questions from anybody up to this point? Okay, if no further questions, then thank you. Thanks to all of you for joining us and spending your hour with us. Thank you.
Thank you everyone.